Hey everybody, today I'm going to touch on a few things in chapter 11 and I'm going to drop a few quiz hints as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So this chapter is all about human resource management. So I just kind of want to take a few minutes and hit some highlights here. In section 1, it gives you kind of the introduction or background of human resource management and how it's kind of evolved over the years, if you will, from and it references some good stats here. I'm not going to read to you, but make sure to check out the introduction because it talks about the different waves and so it kind of explains how it has just evolved over the years. But in this section, it does talk about the employee life cycle. So and it kind of follows the employee from hiring and onboarding all the way through it. So performance management, training, development, all the way to like promotion and then like exit from the company. So whatever that looks like, could be retirement or whatever that looks like. So make sure you are aware of what the employee life cycle is for your quiz. All right. And so here in this section of the chapter, it talks about human resource management and compliance. All right. So compliance, making sure that all the functions are regulating the way they should. And it's a very, very, very important part of human resources. There's a lot of laws that go into human resource management, which we'll get into in just a second. And so compliance is a very huge part of it. All right. So in this section, well, I'll go ahead and, in this section, it talks about what sometimes in the business world you'll hear as SHRM, the acronym SHRM. But it's the Society for Human Resource Management, and it is the largest organization for human resource management professionals. And so if you ever hear of the term SHRM, typically they're referring back to that. But here you will see several different types of regulations that the government has put on us to make sure that we have a fair and equitable working environment, if you will. So ADEA, so the Age Discrimination and Employee Act, and you'll need to be familiar with most of these for your quiz, okay? And so it protects older individuals or 40 and older, if you will. I shouldn't say older because I would fall over in that category, but 40 individuals that are 40 years and older, so people don't discriminate based on their age. And I've been in the working world of both sides. I've worked and been discriminated that I was too young. Probably more so when I first started working in corporate America. I graduated college at the age of 21. So, and then I started grad school, but I started working while I was in grad school. So I started working right away, right after college. And so I definitely got discriminated based on my age, that I was too young. So also the opposite end of that. So it could go both ways, just so you know. So ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So this prohibits employers from discriminating against individuals with disabilities. So we have the Fair Labor Standards Act, the FLSA, and this establishes what we know as like our minimum wage, overtime, record, all of that to make sure that our employees are paid fairly. Then you have FMLA, which a lot of these you've probably heard of, Family and Medical Leave Act. And it entitles eligible employees that are eligible for FMLA for up to 12 weeks of unpaid, but your job is protected. So if you need to take that leave for 12 weeks, you might not get paid, but you will still have your job in a 12-month period, so in a year span. Then you have the NLRA, the National Labor Relations Act, and it extends rights to many employees, including a right to like organize bargain with your employees collectively. And this is one you might not hear about as much. And so they are protected by this act. They are protected from certain types of like employer and union misconduct, and they have the right to attempt to like form a union if there's not one that already exists. And so those are some different laws that are set in place that kind of govern the way that our human resources kind of shapes their company, or things they definitely have to go by in order to meet the standards of our government and not face lawsuits, or attempt not to face lawsuits. But anyway, so I'm going to keep going. I'm just trying to cover different things that'll be in your quiz. In section 3, it talks about performance management. So these are performance management. You'll just kind of be aware of what it is. And it talks about, and it just more so the practices and processes that are important for human resources. And, you know, it really is some of the most contentious processes in an organization. Usually, especially in larger organizations, human resources or the human resource department is kind of what helps the company's function. So very, very important. In fact, I was telling my class today that you know, human resources is probably one of the most important in a company. The department, I mean, smaller companies might not even have a human resource department. One person might do a lot of the things, payroll, human resources, etc. But either whether you're just managing the practices or you have an entire department, it is very important for every company to make sure they have it in line, that they're compliant, and, you know, so forth, and everything that kind of goes into it. So in this section of your chapter, it talks about pay for performance compensation, and that a lot of companies really strive to do that, to use or implement the pay for performance, which is what a lot of people hear of. You probably work for or have worked for a company that implements the pay for performance, but you're typically getting paid per your performance. So every year you might get some kind of evaluation, and they usually have some standard set, and they're seeing if you check the boxes of that standard. Maybe you go above and beyond, and then typically you will get a merit raise based on that. It really depends on the environment of your company. But you also might work for the state where they can't give raises because they don't have funds, or, you know, whatever that looks like. But that's typically what the pay for performance compensation program looks like. And a lot of times this allows a lot of good competition in the marketplace, because, you know, you could be working for an X company and doing awesome and amazing, and you get great evaluations, but they're just not getting raises to go with that. And it could be that they don't give them, or, you know, whatever that may be. So that might you might feel like you're not being appreciated for the work you're giving, and you might leave and go somewhere else. Okay, so that it gives that good competition, or allows for that in the marketplace. All right. It also talks about, when you're looking in section 4, it talks about the total rewards strategy, which you need to be aware of for your exam. And it talks about here, there's 6 different elements when you are looking at the total reward strategy: compensation, benefits, work-life effectiveness, recognition, performance management, and talent development. So those all kind of go into the total rewards. And if you look in this section, in section 4 of chapter 11, it gives you this good little diagram that gives you a visual of what that looks like. But your human resource department is responsible for defining and driving the various elements of an organization's total reward strategy, and ensuring that it's engaging enough to attract and retain good employees. So even though the strategy elements and might be the same, every company's is going to look different. Okay. But just be mindful of what that is for your exam, for your quiz. And one thing it mentions in this section that I think is interesting is it talks about how, performance management and how it can be tracked back to the U.S. military's merit rating system. So that's kind of where it was derived from. So I thought that was just a little interesting tidbit in this section. But if we mosey on to section 11 of chapter 5, talking about building an organization for the future, this section is all about talent acquisition and attracting, recruiting, and good employees. So a talent acquisition, just where human resource management really defines the strategy on how they're going to select employees, recruit them, and then hiring processes that go with that. And that really just helps the organization find the talent that they need. So be mindful of what talent acquisition is on your quiz, for your quiz. In the last section of this chapter, it talks about to talent development and succession planning. You really need to be aware of what succession planning is for your quiz. So when they're talking about succession planning, it's just talking about the process for reviewing key roles, determining the readiness levels of potential internal and external candidates to fill those roles. And so you could have a layout of an organization of a company, and you can think, well, this person has worked in this position for X amount of years and has done really well. Their next step would be going here, or whatever that looks like in your company. But you can also, that's more of an internal look, but you can also do that and bring in external candidates as well. But that's kind of what succession planning is. So just be mindful of what that is for your quiz. It also talks about, what you need to be aware of as well, the 9-box template here. And it kind of plots employee performances versus employee potential, and really provides the reviewer with 9 distinct options or boxes to categorize where that employee is. So it gives you an example here of a 9-box template. And so it's a good visual there of what that would look like in real life, real time, if you will. And it mentions in here that performance is really overall more of an objective rating than potential, because so that leaves the rater to make some assumptions about the future. All right. And then it also talks about competencies here in this section. So, behaviors, and that a lot of times those are good indicators of an employee's potential. So, if they are working at this level in this position, they have good potential to achieve greatness maybe in this position as well. Another thing that they talk about in this section is the 360-degree assessment, or a 360 assessment for managers. And I don't know if you have ever heard of that before, but we talk a lot about that in just management in general. But it's a great developmental tool, and it provides feedback from all around. So that's why they call it the 360 assessment. So from your manager, your peers, direct reports, customers, or others who interact with that employee regularly. So you get feedback from everybody. Once again, why they call it the 360 assessment. And so that is another way for companies or employers to evaluate employees as well. And so that's kind of a quick rundown. The last video I made was kind of lengthy, and I try to keep them under 15. I know I've said 20 minutes. Really in my head I think 15, but if I hit 20, and last time it was way over. So I'm going to stop there, but it was a good rundown, and I want to kind of point out some highlights and things that will be on your quiz as well. But so that is it for chapter 11, but I will be chatting with y'all soon.